South Australia has come out on top in the Navy's surface fleet review. With the work now secure, the focus turns to finding the workforce to get the ships on the water.
Shaking hands with some of the most in-demand people in Australia. The long-awaited surface fleet review has secured jobs for the students of Findon Technical College for decades.
The announcement that we made yesterday underpins continuous naval shipbuilding right here in South Australia at the Osborne Naval Shipyard. Of the $54 billion that will be spent over the course of the next decade, almost $30 billion of that is here in South Australia.
It's no longer a question about where is the work coming from, it's a question about how we make sure we get the work done.
Future engineers, electricians and riggers. But South Australia's technical colleges alone won't deliver the workforce required to build the 6 Hunter-class frigates and next-generation air destroyers, putting pressure on a planned skills academy at Osborne Shipyard to get underway.
We're moving with all haste to establish the Skills and Training Academy, but we're not waiting for a bricks and mortar building to be built. Training is occurring right now. We've got Australian workers, both naval personnel and defence industry personnel, working with the US Navy, learning how to sustain their submarines, and also working with the UK, United States submarine builders to develop the skills they need to build our own submarines in South Australia.
As for manning the ships, the Navy's got that covered.
We've been very clear is that the policy we've announced is consistent with the Navy's 2040 workforce strategy. It actually won't require more sailors than what is already been planned. So to give you an idea, an Anzac requires 180 to 200 crew. The 4 vessels that we've identified have crew ranges of between 80 and 120. So potentially you get 2 crews for our more modern, lethal general purpose frigates than 1 crew for the Anzac.
Monique van der Hayden, Sky News.
Well, for more on those big defence announcements, joining us live now is United States Studies Centre Foreign Policy and Defence Director, Professor Peter Dean. Peter, good to see you as always. A pretty mixed response to yesterday's fleet review. Critics are pretty quick to point out that in the short term we'll see a bit of a hole after decommissioning decisions. How do you expect yesterday's announcement will change Australia's naval capabilities over the next decade?
Well, thank you for that. And yeah, look, you're absolutely right. In the short term, what we're going to see is a bit of a hit to naval capability. And this is just the lived reality of the fact that we have had over a decade of no decision, changing decisions or capabilities that haven't been able to be produced on time and on budget. And of course, structural issues with our current Anzac class ships where, we've seen at least HMAS Anzac have some major structural and maintenance issues that means it's actually more efficient to take it out of the water. So we're just going to have to live with that. Now, the response to that from the ADF and the defence has to be, how do you cover that capability gap or the reduced level of capability by other parts of the integrated force? So Air Force and Army and the other elements that Navy also provides. But over the long term, this is a very ambitious plan, and I think a plan that directly aligns with the strategy set down in the Defence Strategic Review. And I particularly like the fact that the government here is gone for up to 11 general purpose frigates to replace the Anzacs. And the fact that they're going for a mature design that is off the shelf, that is in the water. And for instance, I'll just pick one example, the South Korean ship that had been mentioned. The Republic of Korean Navy just launched the 4th ship in that class to go in the water. So we're talking about proven capabilities, and the first of those being built offshore, which will give us speed to capability. But as your package highlighted earlier, one of the things that we really have to be concerned about here in the delivery is, will we have enough workers? It's not a matter of do we have the work, as the South Australian Premier said. Do we have the workers to get the work done? And that is where one of the really big challenges for our nation and our shipbuilding ambitions really boil down to.
Yeah, and when it comes to personnel, Peter, we have seen a lot of concerns about the ADF having real recruitment issues. Once these vessels are actually on the water, do they need huge workforces to operate them, or is the trend that we're seeing vessels that are a lot more automated than they have been in the past?
Yeah, well, there's two elements to this. There is the workforce to actually build the vessels to get them into the water in the first place, and then there's the workforce the Navy needs to provide the crew. Now, it's really good, and Minister Conroy there is exactly on the money that these vessels require a much smaller crew because of higher levels of automation and the more advanced technology. So if we go back and look at the Anzacs, designed in the 1980s, built in the late 80s into the 1990s, and now we're looking about modern ships that take a significant less amount of crew. The bigger issue really here, and it's great to see that it's not going to require any extra growth in the Navy, but the Navy does have to grow. And at the moment, our ADF is not growing. It's not even keeping up with the current amount of personnel in its ranks, let alone the targets that we've set out for growth. Now, we saw only a couple of weeks ago, the government announced that they're going to change some recruitment standards from some categories, particularly non-deployable areas. And there is talk now about actually bringing foreigners into the Australian military like many other countries do as a pathway to citizenship. And really, I mean, the government's talked about this before. We have a workforce crisis in our ADF. We've got one of the lowest unemployment rates for 50 years. It's a highly competitive labour market. And we know for a fact from Senate estimates the other week that it is still taking far too long to recruit people into the ADF. This was something that was highlighted in the Defence Strategic Review. And this is one of the bigger challenges. So while the government may say it's not requiring any more sailors, the live reality fact is we are not on target to meet that 2040 staffing level for Navy as we sit. So it's great that they haven't increased the burden there, but we really got to get moving as a nation and on our policy settings to encourage young Australians, middle-aged Australians and anyone who's eligible to come and take employment with the ADF. And that has to be an attractive offer from wages, conditions, salary, as well as service to our nation.
Yeah, just one of a slew of challenges facing the ADF at the moment. Professor Peter Dean, always appreciate your insights. Thank you.
Thank you very much.